Here we are, folks. Another week, another CIRF report. Chris McCleary. And yeah, we're getting this out just a little bit later than I would like to. I had all the slides ready to go. And sure enough, the audio settings all reset. So it took me forever, literally, to figure out that they had reset. But here we are. And then on top of that, we have a little bit extra long report today, so bear with me. We have a lot of new people here, and I want to take my time, maybe not going through all the basics, but at least explaining a little bit about what we do here and how we go about these triangulation processes and the different technologies that we use. So here's our summary slide, and before we get into this, I do need to mention how grateful I am to have PIR and all the attention from Phoenix and I'm grateful. I'm very grateful. Thank you for being here. And I couldn't be more pleased. And then sure enough, my audio settings reset. I was planning on having a I'm talking a couple hours ago, earlier report. So anyway, let's move on. Thank you everybody for being here. And I'm going to try to spend a little bit more time to articulate a little bit more about all the things that we have to offer here. But basically, this slide here is our introduction slide. We have two basic phases of the CIRF report each week, and they last about 30 minutes. You can expect this one to last a little bit longer. This is the summary slide for the influence. We triangulate two different things. The first one we triangulate is the main influence. What are we going to feel? What are all of us going to have a good chance of feeling? And then what is going to be the solution? That's the back half of our report. Probably the most important part of this report is, what do we do about it? Like, how do we behave? What should be our actions? Not in order to combat the influence, but we've asked the universe to help us decide what sort of behaviors we need to do in order to maximize the energy afforded us. And the hypothesis is that there's no good or bad energy. The energy is afforded to all of us. It depends on how we're using it, whether or not it's going to be good for us or bad for us. So the reason why we go through the influence portion is so that you can kind of get a gear or kind of get a heads up for how you're going to feel with the particular energies. But we only want to get down to like one sort of energy, the main influence. We're not looking at going deep into astrology and all the different triangulations and alignments and planet in this house, etc. We're not going into detail. We're getting a big picture view of this week, July 23rd, July 29th. And the goal of this first part is to give you the main influence, and we're going to go through the astrology day by day. We're going to go look at the DreamBot. This is the green circle. DreamBot indicates what people are dreaming about. And I think the best video to watch for that is the introduction. It was done a couple years ago, but it's still relevant about why we need to be concerned about what people are dreaming. And just so happens that today, as of today, people are dreaming about communicating and unexpected outcomes. And that matches the astrology perfectly. The astrology is represented by the purple circle. We have the sun in Leo, and Leos are lions. They love to roar and put up a big scene, if you will. Occasionally, they might get off their butts and actually terrorize somebody. But that's the Leo. They need to be seen. They need to be recognized. And they don't have any apologies for either one of those. But in the astrology, we have what's unusual, a grand cross day. We have T-squares. We have double T-squares. And I'll mention what all these do and how they affect you or affect all of us. We even have a grand water trine, all right? And I mean, the energy is just all over the place. So this one is a challenging week in order to figure out what the main influence is. And then we cast coins to figure out what the I-Ching says about what the influence is. Well, this week is about dispersing. So if we have a sun in Leo with all these squares, We have a lot of obstacles. We have a lot of pressure, juxtapositions. It's like damned if you do, damned if you don't. You're going to see that a lot tonight. And if you weren't careful, I promise you, when you see this astrology and see it explained, if we didn't have all these other different technologies like the I-Ching and the DreamBot to help us figure out what the main triangulation is, what the main influence is, you'd probably leave here thinking about, oh, great, this is going to be a scary week. But if you put all this together, the dispersing from the I-Ching, which is kind of like the decimating of obstacles, and that's kind of what a Leo would do, huh? Is not just see all the obstacles, but like roar at them, with fangs out and everything. And so the triangulation here is estimated when you include all these three to be like an outward expression, outward voice, or outward roar towards dissolving obstacles. I know it's a mouthful, but there's a lot of obstacles out there in the sky and the energies. But the sun in Leo wants to express against those obstacles. Congruency down here in the right-hand corner is very high. It's one of the highest we've seen. As you can see, one more thing to point out here on the summary is that the DreamBot, the collective unconscious, is totally inside the astrology for the wanting to communicate. That's the Leo side of things. And then the unexpected outcomes, we've got a little bit of Sun square Uranus that we're going to see, and some other alignments that you'll see. There's a lot of unexpecteds here, as well as the Grand Cross. And so half is in here and half is in the dispersing with the I-Ching. So anyway, let's get started first with the DreamBot, starting on the main influence next. All right, here is the DreamBot again, one more time. We call this the collective unconscious because this is the list, the latest list of what everybody's dreaming about, or the most common things that people are dreaming about in the world. We have a little DreamBot that goes around the world and looks for dreams, and then it brings back all the words that people use in describing their dreams. Whoops, why did I do that? Wrong number. All right, we zoom in, and then we look for memes. We look for connectedness across the words, and I look for like 2 or 3 memes max. The first meme, the biggest meme inside the collective unconscious, is clearly expressing oneself. And the word clarity is number one, clear. So it's very, as well as, purpose, writing, make, showing, invention, lead. These are very Leo words. Invention, creativity. Leos are tend to be very creative with a vision. We think, and then, so like putting all that together is like this. You're making things, but it's very purposeful and it's outward and it's clear-minded, and you want to express that outward. Okay. So then the blue arrows is next. And you put all these together, it's a lot of negativity, to be blunt. And not that negativity is unusual in the DreamBot. It's very common. But when we put it together, we get like odd outcomes. And so negative, unexpected outcomes as a part of the collective unconscious. One more thing about the dream and the DreamBot is that it has had a very long history of being able to see things in the future. And if you really want to get down into the weeds and look at the proof of the power of the DreamBot, look up Project August, National Dream Center. And that's where we predicted 119 headlines. 101 of them came true, and they were based on people's intentional dreams and the DreamBot. So, all right, let's move on and let's get to the Schumann Resonance. Now, the Schumann Resonance is what the Earth is humming at, and again, this is kind of an experimental thing that we put into here. It's the link is down below if you'd like to go to that website. But we're making a hypothesis that as the frequencies and the power goes upward, we're going to see more coherence across the collective, okay? And what I'd like to do eventually is to put this into the summary slide and include it into the influence, because it's a big influence. That Schumann resonance is what the Earth beats at, or this frequency. And I think it affects us. In fact, we know what it's like to not have that Schumann resonance affecting us like astronauts. So we figured out that you get sick after a few days of not having that frequency affect your body. So if you look down here at the middle, it's very faint, but you can see how we describe the COVID situation around November is when the Schumann resonance was actually our coherence, our collective coherence was going down, down, down. And then it starts popping up around May 2020. And last week it was slightly going up. And guess what? It's slightly going up again. You can see that a lot of these lines here, I should probably get my highlighter out. Hold on. Get my highlighter and I can show you where my cursor is pointing to. But you can see like the blue arrows are fairly steady. I'm mainly looking at the lows of the red arrows and they're slightly climbing. So I'm going to say it's just a very slight edge upward, and that's sort of a positive trend. I like seeing that. All right, next is right at the end of our last CIRF report. I believe I missed the big one, Sun in Leo. And so as we wake up on Thursday, it's already in Leo, not quite a degree, so it's freshened. It's got that creative insight and that power, that fire, and and again, just like the DreamBot said, the need, the desire to express, to be seen. That's the Leo way, and very creative. So that's the ego is what is represented by the sun, and so yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I use this slide as more of an overview, and I just note here, the main thing I want to note here is that there's a lot of alignments, important alignments that are going exact on the 27th. 27th seems to be a very a chip-chop day, and what you're going to see is a lot of squares. Squares represent obstacles. Not a lot of people think of it as real negative. It doesn't have to be. It's just things are a little bit more difficult. Things are a little bit more conflicted. Things are more, damned if I do, damned if I don't, especially if you've got two squares. I think it's better if I just move on and explain those in detail for each day. But just recognize that on the 27th, a lot of energies are going exact, and they happen to be, well, there's two squares and there's a sextile. Sextiles are more opportunities. So here we have, I'll take the highlighter off, and you just have a lot of red. You have a square, moon square, Venus. Venus is double squared, meaning that she's got a 90-degree angle on her, a square this way and a square this way. And you have Mars with a double square over to Mercury and a square over to Jupiter. When you have a double square, these are sort of not incredibly unusual, but you don't see a two of them. You don't see them all week long with all these squares. And by the way, this is about the least squares you're going to see. So overall, every time you see this red square thing, you'll be thinking like obstacles, and maybe you have to wait, forced of patience and that kind of thing. And so with the Mars with a double square, that's probably the biggest one, because the Venus, one of those squares is the moon, and the moon whips around here the fastest. So that's going to go away the quickest. But the Mars in Aries is, Mars rules Aries and is home to that fire, the fire of Du, Yang. Mr. Yang is Mars, and he's got two squares. So we're damned if we do over to Jupiter. Jupiter is the wisdom. And so I might not be doing a lot of wise things. I might be impulsive. Mars and Aries. Aries is very impulsive and kind of get egotistical. And what's in it for me? And check this out. So Mars is conflicted over to Mercury, which is communication and knowledge and mind and logic and rational and learning. And so we're not really thinking very clearly. By the way, Jupiter on the other side, the other conflicted side, is sort of the deeper mind of Mercury. If Mercury is kind of the lower mind, there's the rational logic. Jupiter is the deeper wisdom philosophy. So Mars is obscured from, obstacled from both of those. And so we might be doing things very impulsively with very little patience. And that's something to watch out for. It's not going to be in the summary slide, so just take note of that now. Watch out for impulsivity. This is kind of the prelude to the biggies later on in the week, the double T-square and the Grand Cross. And by the way, since we're talking about conflict, a lot of conflict with these squares, on Thursday the 23rd, there's a big debate coming, and I encourage all of you, if you're interested in vaccines, maybe mandatory vaccines, this is a historic debate between RFK Jr. and the head of Children's Health Defense, and then Alan Dershowitz. No comment there. This is mandatory vaccine man. He says that we don't own the right to decline a vaccine. So if you're really interested in that one, that's 7:45 a.m., I believe. Let's see here, 7:45 a.m. Central Standard Time on July 23rd. Take note of that now. It's 1 hour long. I'm very anxious to be watching that. That's on Thursday. Hopefully you guys get this before that. That would have to be tonight, I guess. So anyway, it's very early in the morning for some of you. All right, we move on to Friday, and not a lot of changes. I'd say the big changes, you can see the moon now is on a trine. Trine is a real easy energy, so easy emotions that are Virgo. Virgo is very detail-oriented. This might be a compulsive kind of a OCD sort of arrangement, emotionally very attached to my to-do list, and that's easy easy to kind of get death and rebirth in there, and Saturn is rules and government, and then Jupiter is the higher wisdom and positive nature and optimism. And it's all easy, but it doesn't last very long because the sun really does whip around the sky much faster than everyone else. What I like to point out is the Venus in Gemini, very harmonious sort of arrangement, is in conjunct with Jupiter. And so this requires an adjustment. Adjustments are necessary. So between my relationship and maybe my finance in a very adaptable Gemini and learning Gemini, but we're going to have to adjust our relational expectations with maybe some sort of too much positive is a bad thing too. And this might be what it looks like. It's just too positive or too expansive, too much of something, maybe too much relationship. So that's all matches with Venus square to Neptune. There's kind of your relationships may feel like they're not in accordance with your dream, your fantasy, and that can be frustrating. And so this feels like a frustration of some sort, maybe, possibly, too much of a good thing with the Jupiter, and maybe not enough compared to what your dreams were. All right, and here we go. Here's what a Grand Cross looks like. And the main players, although this is not all that important on a Grand Trine, are Moon, Jupiter, Mars, and Mercury. We've already talked about Mercury and Jupiter, how we got the lower part of the mind, the logic, and it's not the bad part of the mind. It's just the kind of the more human part of the mind, and day to day and lower level learning. All these are requiring you to really dance around and get balanced. It's very hard. You're seeing obstacles from inside and out, especially with Mars opposing the moon. Anytime you see an opposition, this is a need to balance. Mars needs to balance. Mars, impulsive, Aries, fire Mars needs to balance with these, justice-oriented and harmonious emotions, which may not be so harmonious right now because of this double square over here. So the Grand Cross is basically you've got two oppositions, perfectly in 90 degrees from each other, and therefore you've got a big old square happening with the 90-degree squares. And remember, if squares are conflicts and obstacles, well, this is a kind of a pressure cooker, and it's like you can't help but be seeking out obstacles in this case, because it's all about balancing. It feels out of balance. It feels out of whack. This is the evening of Saturday. So Saturday evening, expect a little bit of how about imbalance? We'll just do that. Grand Cross. Very, rather unusual to see this. It doesn't come along all the time. All right, on Sunday the 26th, we have now the moon is adding 3 more squares. We have Mars with another square. And so it's just red, red, red. It's square. We even have the sun now, sun square Uranus. What is that? And our ego, sun represents ego, and Leo needs to be seen, needs to be heard, wants to be recognized, is very creative. But that is not very creative when it comes to the obstacles produced by Uranus. Uranus in the planet of change and unexpected change, and that's in Taurus. So something materialism is changing in some way. And boy, does it feel conflicted. Might even feel like you're losing yourself in this, especially as you're maybe trying with the Leo to be heard. And you are finding that you're meeting resistance. Uranus feels like resistance sometimes, especially in places and signs that it doesn't like to be in. And it's sort of more of like an Aries sort of planet, rules Aquarius, but now it's in Taurus. And so it's kind of got to get used to that. And it's changing up our material side of things. It's very eccentric, and it can change on a dime. All right, on Monday, check this out. Not all that usual either. This is fairly unusual, is to have 2 T-squares, and some people would say we have 3 T-squares. T-squares are sort of a trap, but you have one planet here, Sun, has 2 squares. All these Davids and all these different configurations with planets with 2 squares is really unusual. And when you have 2 squares, you automatically have an opposition. So the moon and Uranus oppose each other. But the trap here, and that's what the T-square really is sort of a kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't like that word. I like the word trap the best in this case. And the pinnacle of the alignment is the sun, and so the ego in this case is the trap. I say it's the epitome of our influence that's covered by the DreamBot and the sun in Leo. It's the need to be recognized, but that's the trap. It's the need to get stuff done, and that's the trap. Speaking of get stuff done, we've got Mars with the other T-square. And so you've got the squares over here and the squares over here, along with an opposition, the same opposition we talked about before. That's a trap. And so the need to get stuff done impulsively without thought, because as soon as you try to think about what we're trying to do, you run into obstacles. Each one of these squares, obstacles. You run into resistance and juxtapositions. So there's another trap. Boy, aren't you getting this now? If we didn't have all these other overlaps with other technologies, we'd be thinking like, oh my God, I'm not looking forward to this week. But the influence is, the solution to all this is wonderful. I promise. You need to stay until the end to get the solution. All right, on Tuesday now, everything sort of shifts. You start seeing some of these squares start dying away. As soon as they get segmented, they're starting to wane. They've gone past the exact point, and now that energy starting to wane. And what we get out of that waning is a grand water trine. We've got 3 planets all at 120 degrees from each other, and this is easy energy. It's very easy in a water sign. So Mercury's in Cancer. We got Neptune in Pisces and the moon in Scorpio. All water signs indicated by blue. And so this is a grand water trine. It feels very slow to do stuff, first of all. Mars, again, if you're trapped up in the Mars trying to get stuff done, that's a hard place to be in water. It's like, imagine trying to run in water. It's sluggish. It's heavy. Things are kind of heavy in a grand water trine, but they're also very spiritual in nature. What does water represent? Emotions. It might be very emotional. Easy to connect with other people. That's almost the telepathy. The mysticism might be easy for you on Tuesday, the 28th. Then on the last day of our CIRF report, the squares really are starting to stale, and we have a Sun trine Moon. It's a very well balanced. So things are really starting to change. The main thing on this day is the Mercury oppose Jupiter and Pluto. So your thoughts have to balance with this notion of expansiveness and optimism. And then Pluto is, of course, the death and rebirth, and everything looks like it's ending and the end of the world, but it's also the beginning of something new and grand. All right, so that's that kind of finalizes everything for the week. And what we have left to talk about in this portion is the I-Ching reading. So get rid of our highlighter. When we toss the coins out, you toss the coin 6 times, and this is your standard I-Ching hexagram. And we start from the bottom. The first line is yin, second line is yang, etc. So when you plug this into the reader, it's hexagram 59. This is gentle over the abysmal. And here's where we read about the influence. And by the way, just so if you're new here, we've got change lines. So if you have 3 heads, that's equal to 9, which is a yang line, but you get a change on it. And what that means is when we go to the when we go to the solution, you apply the changes. Basically, it's the opposite of this line. So this is yang goes to yin in the solution hexagram. All right, so dispersing. Here's what it means. Nothing survives forever. What does that sound like? That sounds like Pluto is doing its work, destroying everything. Not even rocks are the most rigid of structures. Likewise, all of our obstacles will dissolve in time too. So according to the I-Ching, what you just saw was a face full of obstacles from all these squares, which, by the way, is really unusual. You have the influence to dissolve those as well. So obstacles aren't there to just torture you. They're there to hone your skills. They're there to make you stronger. And that's what this is doing too, according to the I-Ching. The erosion of that which has been solid is not a bad thing. In fact, it means that something new is in the process of being created. Rigidity in the hearts of humans breeds an egocentric separateness, but this can be transformed by a greater force, such as the uplifting ceremony or other communal activity. The thawing of closed hearts always improves conditions for everyone. Before the heart, the first thing to dissolve is any mental rigidity that might be feeding a sense of separation from others. Try to work closely with your friends and compatriots, concentrating on common activities that emanate from your integrity and goodwill. Okay, so then I typically read these lines, and it is getting late, so you can read those you can pause those and read those for yourself if you'd like. Obviously, I crossed out line 5 because we don't have that line as a change line, but those are important. All right, now I have a special change in our promotion ad, and a big shout out to Perry D, who gave me the gratis music for the background. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the solution right after this. right. If you need mental health counseling, psychotherapy, life coaching, if you'd like an astrology reading, if you'd like to know who you are with a human design, we're going to get into human design tonight in the solution. Look up innerzension.com and you can apply for some help. If you're outside of Arkansas, then we can do some life coaching and get your life back on track or figure out who you are in this field of energy so that you can maximize your life individually. All right, when we apply the change lines from the previous hexagram, we get this. Remember, anytime there's a dot, it changes the line to the opposite from yin to yang and vice versa. But anyway, we get 28. And this one is the joyous over gentle. What does that mean? It's the lake over wind. What does that mean? Excessive pressure is hexagram 28. Something is about to collapse. Wow. Remember, we're reading this I-Ching as if it's the solution now. So we've transitioned from the influence. We know that the influence is that expressing and needing to be heard and communicating in relation to the obstacles, which are being decimated, by the way. All right, and now the solution is we're gonna use these behaviors to maximize that energy that was afforded to us. So excessive pressure, something is about to collapse. A great pressure is causing an imbalance that needs correction. Wait, did it say is causing an imbalance? That's that grand cross, the epitome of imbalance. If the dam is about to burst, moving out of the way is your first priority. When the roof is collapsing, run first and choose your destination later. Remember when we talked about Mercury and Jupiter and the square from Mars? This is exactly that solution, which you can't really stop and think too much because it's unreliable. When you stop and think and try and get your real wise choice, it creates obstacles. So it's really an unusual time where, in actuality, based on the influence, it's better to save yourself first, and then create when you have time to kind of collect and think rationally. Now it's the time to analyze what you have left. Let me continue reading. Extraordinary times bring out the best and worst in people. Natural disasters produce stories of heroism, but also of looting and rioting. When a great weight is upon your world, powerful moments present opportunities to make great gains because everything is in a state of flux. One can either move in the direction of positive change and improvement or towards stagnation. To achieve the former, one must go gently to the heart of the issue, to the cause. Then a smooth transition is assured. This may be the moment you have been waiting for. Although the current challenge may seem more than you can handle, remember that a flood usually reaches its high water mark for only a few brief moments before it begins to subside. Action must be taken now to ensure opportunities for success later on. You never know the true extent of your abilities until you, at least once in your life, dive into a crisis with complete abandon, dedicating every ounce of your energy and every fiber of your being to the cause at hand. Now is the time. Dare to win. And what I've got here is, we're going to have probably that fear of failure, and we need to cross that out purposefully. When you know this is your gig, go do it. You might feel anxiety, you might feel hesitation, you might feel I'm not enough for this. What this is suggesting is that you're going to be afforded opportunities here that are going to be shown from sort of a conflict standpoint or an obstacle standpoint. That obstacle, instead of running away from it, we run to it. Okay? And that's the overall orientation from the I-Ching. Let's continue on, though, to get the other side of things. Now, this chart is a very important one, and what I do is I take the snapshot of the tropical astrology, and this is the influence. The tropical is the influence because it's our ancient influence, and it still affects our seasons. Seasons don't change in those times. But if you go out to the night sky, and like, for example, sun is in tropical Leo. So if you go out to the night sky, well, I guess you're not going to see the sun, but it's supposed to be in Leo. But if you were able to see the constellation, you'd actually be seeing Cancer. Now, so this is our sidereal astrology, and sidereal is basically when you look out at the night sky, this is actually what you see. And so we call this the solution. We need to get in line with what the stars are doing. So we find the main influence, which is the ego, the sun in Leo, which is the need for communication and to be recognized and be seen. And then we basically plot that. We go through the Rave Mandala, which is from Human Design. And if you don't know what Human Design is, it's a new form of astrology, but it combines the I-Ching, it combines all Kabbalah, and it gives you a chakra system, and it gives you who am I and how am I supposed to behave in this world. Well, anyway, we're going to be using this as our solution. So 56, hexagram 56, and then Cancer. All right. And Cancer is our solution, and 56, the late line, is our solution. So let's look at the gate of stimulation. That's hexagram 56 or gate 56 in the Rave Mandala. The 56th gate transforms the abstract into language. This is the gate of stimulation and says, I believe. The idea is never a solution, but always a journey. So according to the Rave Mandala, we're looking for the crashing through these obstacles is more of a journey, not the goal. Our goal isn't to decimate the obstacles. The goal is to be aware that we're on this journey. All right, continue. The collective mind is about translating the human experience into language. That is the DreamBot, folks. The human experience into language. That's exactly what the influence was. This is crazy. It is about fixing our relative place in time, the logic projecting into the future, and abstract reflecting on the past. Once an idea is expressed verbally, that is the end of the process. Holy cow. So what is basically saying is this Rave Mandala, gate 56, is saying the influence is also the solution, according to the Rave Mandala. All right. So we need to verbally talk. We need to verbally communicate what sort of obstacles we're seeing. All right. And basically what I wanted to get here is that there, according to the Rave Mandala, is asking you to take caution. So that's a little bit different, of course, but remember, we're triangulating stability through movement, the perpetuation of continuity through the linking of short-term activity. Remember honesty and expression and living by one's word. But if you are yearning for acceptance in your communication, you will create rejection. You will create obstacles. Okay? You will create more pressure. Okay? That's the bottom line there. All right. Now, what I want to show you is the final summary slide. And what we do is we quickly go over the influence. Remember, the Schumann Resonance is on a slight upward trend. That is very positive. The influence is the sun in Leo, and it's obstacles. So we're outward expressing, probably with our fangs out, outward expression to dissolve the obstacles. Now, what's the solution then? All right. So here we go. We're going to triangulate the I-Ching, the Rave Mandala, and Sidereal, which is Cancer. And then we're going to do an overall triangulation with specific solutions. All right. So with all what I said before, you have the I-Ching, hexagram 28, excessive pressure, dare to win. With the Rave Mandala, it's the gate of stimulation. We need to verbally express things, but don't yearn for acceptance because you're going to only bring more resistance. And then Sidereal Cancer is protective. It's caring, maternal. So when we put all that together, what do we get? we get an overall triangulation of action is now. And I hate saying this. It almost sounds not very logical, but you are pretty much cut off from your low rational mind and your deeper expansive Jupiter because of those squares. So we do need to just use that Mars and Aries and go for it. Action now. Dare to win. Reject all fear of failure. Watch out for any need for acceptance and keep that in check. Test your abilities to push yourself beyond what you know is possible. Recognize your limitations and press even further than what you thought were your limitations. In other words, extend those limitations. Your previous limitations are no longer your current limitations, all right? Push yourself a little bit further this week. Verbalize your intentions without trying to sway others. Be yourself, your true self. And going back to the acceptance thing, acceptance brings rejection. The Cancer solution. So what does Cancer have to do with all this? It's about protectiveness for self and others. It's a caring attitude. It's nurturing. Cancer is. You can combine that Leo influence, like we talked about, the need to express, but in a nurturing way, in a very creative way. Both Cancer and Leo are creative. And then with the Jupiter, eliminate pessimism despite anything you see. And by the way, we include the Cancer influence is not just positive stuff like creativeness and caring. It's also can be moody and pessimistic. So when we're asking you to accentuate more Cancer into your behaviors, you have to watch out for the moodiness and not being pessimistic and clingy and nagging. Okay, we want to be on the more positive side of Cancer, which is the caring and protectiveness. Wow. All right. So about 10 extra minutes for this. I hope you enjoyed this. Converse down below, comment below if you have any questions, especially the new folks here. Thank you for being here. Thanks for your likes and shares. I really do hope that that you all understand this and get a lot out of it. And if not, please comment below and let me know what sorts of things would be more helpful for you. Another shout out to Phoenix and PIR for all the things you do. Shout out to all the patriots out there for the effect we're having on the world, with Twitter being basically, shut down 7,000 patriot accounts. Keep on going. We keep pushing. This is confirmation that people are scared. People are scared of the truth movement. All right. So this is a great week to continue the progress that we have already made so far. All right, guys and gals, we'll see you next week with another surf report. Take care.